if you're a mogul or something, cyber stalking me, you might wonder how so many of the MAGA people in the British intelligence here seem to already know so much about the wheel of the um, particulars of the unfolding of the idea at play in what um, Brian Eno arranged with Bowie and Reagan and Bush, the Jeffin Corporation back in the 80s. While other people say, "What are you talking about?" They don't have a slightest idea what's going on. And there's a lot of nefarious details and so forth. Um, when Muhammad Ali was alive, this was going on. Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jeff and Media got this idea of having the story just sort of, Havel had the idea of using media to just sort of encourage people to think about what they were prompting them to put together. The idea that Reagan didn't know and so on. What's this? I'm sorry to apologize to the Kirk and goes to Rio Kono, I mean. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The fluxus monotony of the whole job. Um, I think it helps to see what it was that I thought at first. You know, Gabriel's a whiz kid, he said when he met his wife Jill, I think was her name. Said she was the prettiest girl in the room. Therefore, um, it was quite simple. There's a picture of him back in those days with two nose picks on his nose. He says Moses knows his roses. He knows your pick. And he's going to remove immortality with the nose pick because he knows your pick. But I didn't put any of this stuff together. I'm not like in the cognitive development spectrum of these assholes. What I thought was Midori's a logical person to inform about the murder of John Lennon and the East West Circuit Road and team of Cyril Wacht. I admit that I was a wreck. Um, I thought, if I could convince her to team up with me a little bit, we could um, play a hand in alerting people about this abomination. She didn't want to do it. She was evidently already part of the plan, the operation. She was in on the whole thing. In other words, I was trying to, rather than trying to get somebody to help who had the same ideas as me, warning people and apprehending the guilty, putting a stop to them at least. I was being lured into the trap even further, which I didn't understand at first. Started to become obvious because everything was so obviously in place. And Roger Waters and Reagan were particularly vicious. They were saying Jimmy was imitating Lenin, should have memorized the letters. I memorized quite a bit of the Raven, by the way. And so we take custody of his enigma, and he's the man who would be king. And Trump gave me a hottie and took her away from me. The world you lost, what could have been yours? And the violinist comes out. And this was all revenge for Hiroshima and the little boy from the Navy. Bush actually forced me as representative of the U.S. Navy to go to the Dakota and apologize to the spirit of Tojo. I mean, this is a secret of American fascism that this went on. And Tony Levin was saying, oh, he was just a crawling little bug, a little wuss who whimpered to be friends with the car thieves that he claims tortured him now. And he wasn't about to look at any of the evidence because he said James K and KC are our bondage, James bondage. And that's like KC. And they were like going, oh, King Crimson, oh. And that's the way they had it set up. I mean, the idea was celebrating the script that murdered John Lennon is what they're saying. And one of the things I pointed out was that Gail Burst's likeness is on their record from 1979. Talking Heads drummer was her neighbor. And Lennon's double fantasy is encrypted in the media semiotics of the people who are mentioned in the script, like the people who made the film The Passenger, which plays a big figures bigly in the script. So you're not supposed to put this together. I mean, in other words, I think it would have been about. At one point, somebody said, "What is it you're trying to do?" I said, "I'll marry Midori and join the Beatles." Why would I say something like that? Well, obviously, Tony Levin and Ringo Starr came out with Parkinson's spray. Yeah, they were out to murder innocent people with the very idea. They saw that as a revolution, it's communist traitors. But the reason why I was saying that was really very simple. They had put me anonymously on and I was saying, just give me a voice in this matter so I can tell people what happened on Mount Island. There was Venus flytrap clogged to the AIDS attack, and we have to stop these people. It's a dishonorable representation of American government. It's an enemy within. I still think that was a much better idea than building momentum for these people by spreading, like Eno said, we'll give the only way that we can control the hatred of Yusu Andor is to give him a white man to murder. So they had Yusu Andor pop up out of a rabbit's hat. What's up, Doc? And I get to murder Jimmy. I get to murder Jimmy. And they're ripper murdering people in Seattle to illustrate the principle. They have something about injecting values on the back of my father's obituary and don't know who, and the German Green Party. And they tied this pimp knot, The black man hired an attack prostitute from India to come on to me for the army to go. He's what were they saying? The white gangs in the U.S. Army at CMU were calling me Custer for being seduced by an Indian girl who took me to her home. It was her idea. She invited me to her home, telling me her roommate was away. And they made it into something that King Crimson could call an ideogram. I mean, I hate to belabor this, but they had a diamond with a cross in the middle, and I said it's a two-dimensional shadow of a tetrahedron. You're using an inappropriate metaphor for your concept of rock stars and groupies being brought together for the sacred. I said you just take two triangles and put them together, and you get the fourth triangle. It's a synergetic assembly. And they're like, no, son, silence, silence. Virginity proves rape. Soon to be another ice age. Yeah, and some of these characters who are online know the whole. They're sort of tinkering with it. We'll throw Wichita figure skaters into Bobby Kennedy's blender, and that'll. It's just they're tampering with it because of Spike Lee's idea that poetry is an allegory for justice, poetic justice, which is just nonsense. The idea that justice is a hard, difficult pursuit involving establishment of facts. It has nothing to do with Tamo de Jong's archetypal theory, Spike Oldby, Spike Oldby. And I'm not supposed to see. They use me as a rattle box to give them ideas about their next act of domestic terrorism. And I've said it's the same people hitting both sides so many times. They're playing a game of clear the air. And then Seattle tries to pull it off as saying it was by giving me something that causes Parkinson's. So the tape self-destructs, and they can say, see, he's having a psychosis of dementia. It's the double having a fantasy of grandeur. The double, he thinks he's me, he thinks he's the walrus, he thinks he's good like us. I'm just saying, I went undercover and found some evidence that shows these people were planning the attacks. And I just wanted to get some help communicating that to a public risk of my peers. And I found that my peers had been prior lobbied by Peter Gabriel and Saul Brecker and Ringo Starr. Oh,